Hi friends, welcome to yet another video on Tutorials Point with me, Richa. Today in this aviation module segment, we will talk about dangerous goods. Well, what exactly is dangerous goods all about, and also understanding the protocols and prohibitions by aircraft to carry or not to carry dangerous goods. Well, let's see what is there on the agenda today for us. We will talk about what dangerous goods are. We will define dangerous goods. We will talk about DGCA requirements with regards to dangerous goods requirements, dangerous goods classification. So there are different classifications of dangerous goods transportation, how they can be transported to the aircraft, DGR do's as well as certain don'ts that aircrafts need to follow. Well, let's get started on this module. If we have to give a definition of what dangerous goods are any articles or substances which are capable of posing a significant risk to health, safety or property when they are transported by air. Well friends, let's not forget, transporting passengers from one destination to the other is full of risk. There can be emergencies within the aircraft. There can also be certain issues or certain things which are instigated with the help of dangerous goods. There are certain things which have to be carried and which should never ever be carried with regards to dangerous goods. And hence today we'll talk about those articles as well as substances which should not be carried on board the aircraft. Well, certain examples of dangerous goods are, now these are things that you can never ever carry on your carry-on baggage or your hand baggage which you take in with you inside the cabin. Let's take a look at those. So you cannot carry pesticides inside the cabin, gas cylinders, be it in any form, small or big, aerosols, phenyl cannot be carried, bleach or bleaching materials should not be carried, thinners which are used by ladies to remove their nail polishes, those are thinners which should not be carried. Paints, lighters as well as matchsticks. Well friends, these are not allowed inside the cabin baggage, whereas for checked-in baggages you are allowed to carry these particular materials. Looking at why exactly is it dangerous to carry these dangerous goods. So there are certain reasons why aircrafts or airline operators do not allow passengers to carry these dangerous goods. The reasons are, it can start a fire, so any small trigger or instigation can lead to fire. It can help spreading of fire. Can cause injury through contact as well as radiation. Well, there are certain materials, if there is a small spark, they can really have immense radiation qualities. Can project pieces, injuring persons or even damaging the aircraft. There are certain dangerous goods which can damage the parts of the aircraft. It can release toxic vapor which can cause harm. If these toxic vapors are inhaled by passengers or crew, they can absolutely lose their consciousness. It can react with aircraft material. Some of the parts of the aircraft are made of very sensitive material, and dangerous goods can really lead to a spark or fire on these particular materials of the aircraft. Well, let's understand who decides DGR, who decides whether these goods are to be carried or not to be carried. Well, there is an organization by the name of ICAO, that's International Civil Aviation Organization, and that is the body which governs whether these dangerous goods shall be carried or not. Now, ICAO every 2 years it publishes every 2 years, deals with technical instructions for the safe transportation of dangerous goods by air. So every 2 years there is a recommendation or there's a revision on these particular dangerous goods. Well friends, classification of DGR is very, very huge. It has many categories. Certain categories are, it has explosives, it has toxic gases, it has radioactive materials, it has oxidizing agents, flammable as well as non-flammable solids and liquids. It has dangerous kind of toxic gases or vapors. It has infectious substances, some corrosives, certain things which can really instigate fire very, very quickly. So mostly or generally the classification of DGR is done under 9 categories, and we'll now look at some of them in detail. Well, what are explosives? Explosives are substances which can be solid as well as in liquid form. Let's take a look at them. a solid or a liquid substance, or it can be a mixture of both, which is in itself capable of chemical reaction of producing gas at a temperature and pressure and at such a speed so as to cause a damage to the surroundings. Well, explosives, if they are carried inside the aircraft cargo, they can lead to lot of gaseous emanations which could be harmful to the passengers as well as to the entire aircraft. Let's look at what are flammable gases. Now these are the markings or the logos for flammable gases as well as explosives, which we just saw in the other slide. Now whenever there is a particular product which has to be carried on to the cargo or checked in, they have to have these markings and labels. So for flammable gas, this is the marking. It is a gas, a substance which at 50 degrees centigrade has a vapor pressure greater than 300 kPa and is completely gaseous at 20 degrees Celsius at a standard pressurized 101.3 kPa. So friends, these are gases which can really instigate fire and they are very, very easily flammable. Hence, they have to be avoided carrying by the passengers. Talking about certain prohibitions. So friends, some products or some dangerous goods have very strict regulations, and certain times they are not such strict regulations in terms of carrying them on board the aircraft. So some dangerous goods are identified as very, very or too dangerous, and they cannot be carried in the aircraft under any circumstances. So they are completely forbidden. Whereas there are some others which are forbidden under normal circumstances or situation, but they may be carried with special kind of circumstances, getting the approved from the state where it has to be uplifted. So for example, if a dangerous good needs to be carried from Mumbai to Delhi, the government of the state of Mumbai has to give an allowance or has to give it in a written declaration form that they are allowing them to carry this particular dangerous good. Well, there are certain dangerous goods which are restricted by carriage on only and only on a cargo aircraft and not on a commercial aircraft. Most can be safely carried on passenger aircraft provided certain requirements are met. So these are certain requirements which the airline removes from time to time in terms of what is the amount which can be carried for these dangerous goods. Well friends, talking about packaging, now this is again a shipper's responsibility or the aircraft airline operator responsibility to make sure that the dangerous good is packaged in a nice manner, in such a manner that there is absolutely no leakage of the material which is being carried. So it has to have a sender, a receiver marking, who is the sender, who is going to receive it, the name of the person, the responsibility of the shipment, as well as what is the kg or the weight of that particular material which is carried. So these are packaging instructions which every shipper or aircraft airline operator needs to adhere to strictly. It should also have a label of what is carried inside this particular packaging. So if it's a flammable gas, it has to have a logo of flammable. If it is an explosive or a toxic material or a toxic vaporization, it has to have a logo of the same. So this is a packaging which every aircraft needs to adhere to whenever they're carrying any kind of dangerous good, not in the cabin but in the checked-in baggage. Talking about certain marks and labels, well, as mentioned a little while before, every airline which is carrying dangerous good needs to have marking on those packets or the packaging which is done. So if it is an explosive, if it is a flammable gas, toxic, or it is any kind of radioactive substances, it has to have the correct label which is marked generally by red, because red is a sign of danger or red is a sign of a warning signal. So hence these are certain labels and markings for you, and this has to be strictly adhered to by the airline operator. Talking about declaration form, no airline will allow any passenger to carry dangerous good if it is not accompanied by a declaration form. A declaration form is a kind of an MOU which a passenger signs for the aircraft that he is not carrying any kind of product or substance inside that packaging which can be harmful to the passengers or harmful to the aircraft as a whole. So this is a declaration form. It has certain criteria, certain information which the particular passenger needs to read as well as sign at the end, that he is not going to be responsible, or rather he will take the responsibility for that particular packaging. So this is again a very mandatory requirement. Coming to notification to pilot in command. Well friends, if there is a product or a dangerous good being carried inside the aircraft, even in the checked-in or the cargo material, the pilot has to be informed about it. The captain needs to have information that there is something which is being carried inside the cargo which can lead to certain mishaps or emergencies should there be a leakage of that particular product which is being carried. So captain has to have full authority, full knowledge about what is going inside that particular package, and the declaration form also needs to be shared with the pilot of the same. Well, there are a lot of incidents which might happen with the cabin crew wherein they have heard something happening or a passenger discussing that they're carrying dangerous goods. Well, such incidents might lead to a greater emergency if the cabin crew does not report it or speak up about it. Incidents like this keep happening, and it's important to report to your immediate supervisor or immediate manager that such and such case or incident is about to happen. So all the cabin crew members need to be very, very vigilant and observation in terms of handling the passengers. Talking about undergoing a DGR training, a dangerous good training is something which is mandatory requirement for each and every airline's cabin crew. So this is a training which happens for 5 days time, and this is to be used by all the cabin crew people to understand that they need to undergo this training, and after this training they are given a certificate which shows to the to the airline that they are DGR certified. So this is a mandatory requirement. All cabin crew needs to undergo DGR training, which is supervised by the airline operator. Well, how can you recognize dangerous goods? Each class has a hazard symbol known as a placard or label that represents the danger of that particular class. So if it is a very highly flammable, it will be having a placard or a label of that particular choice. Labels must be attached to small containers, example drums, boxes, bottles or cylinders. These are smaller articles or smaller substances, and labels can be attached to them. But for bigger substances, placards must be attached to larger containers. For example, trucks, trailers, tanks, etc. So whenever there is a bigger substance or a container to be carried, a placard must be there, and for smaller containers, a label can be done. Well friends, that brings us to a conclusion of dangerous goods, and I hope you have enjoyed and understood how important dangerous good training is for a cabin crew. If you truly want to become a cabin crew, you need to undergo this DGR training. It is for the safety of yourself, your passengers and your aircraft as a whole. Thank you for listening to us, and thank you so much for watching us.